This is the Take Your Turn 2022 tournament hosted by Groove of War. Groove of War hosts Wargroove commentary and analysis, and of course, a link to their channel in the description. Take Your Turn is composed of 3 events: Wargroove, Chess, and Go. And on this channel, we're looking primarily at Go. My name is Arnfosta. The commentary is aimed at newer players, players in the double-digit Q ranks. If you do spot any mistakes or things we miss, absolutely leave them in the comments, let us know. Commentating with me today is our usual Just Your Eventual Ruler. Hey, Ruler.
Thank you. Usual,
The
an
usual.
honor, an honor.
Co-cast and buddy.
Okay,
Yeah, so
thank you.
today we're going to be looking at round 3, game 1, between Saykoya playing black and FadedSun playing white. And this is, we had a chance to talk about it as we get into it in the first couple moves. It's an interesting game. And I think probably the way we talk about it may be a little different than some of the others. But
Mm, I think it's actually pretty important to go over the first few moves in this
yeah,
one because I do think it does reflect a little bit. So the
please.
first four moves don't matter, but the fifth, sixth, and seventh
Hmm.
do, I would say. Um, so first, Sequoia goes. It's not quite Sanrense, but it's like a more territorial version.
Right.
Um, you're pretty close to guaranteeing side territory with this move. Um, so it's a pretty nice move if you plan on fighting a lot,
Hmm.
or a lot more than you would on Sanrense. Sanrense, usually you build a lot first, make walls, and then you fight. This is probably more, I'm going to take a huge side and then fight. Um, and the next move, Faded encloses. But is this a true enclosure? Like, does this guarantee a corner? I'm not entirely sure. There's probably like a probe here, right? There's probably something
I
you can
think
do
there. I
here.
feel like there is a probe here, but I haven't. I was trying to. I've been trying to read it out, and I'm not 100% sure. It looks. It's odd to me. It looks a little. It looks like
It
there should be
makes,
something there.
I mean, this is like, to me, as fishy as using is doing a large jump after your opponent approaches. Like, just not even like a large knight, just a large jump.
Hmm.
I used to do that whenever I had Sonnet say because it's just really efficient, but there's issues with it. There's a lot of probing that light can do, or your opponent can do on the inside of it, and try and make life. Where it's just safer to have a closer jump. With this, I think you might have a probe on the bottom of the C4 stone,
Right.
and that probe might still work, and I think it does.
So it's not totally secure, but it also we're with that double jump. We're trying to get out a little bit farther and kind of
Yeah.
find that balance. But we
Well,
are
it's a little.
leaving open. Hmm.
Yeah, it's a little closer to the center oriented rather than just I want the corner. It makes sense here since Sequoia hasn't really committed a low stone to the right side yet. So you can get a little more efficient if you
Hmm.
build high here. Um, and this move is playable. It's not bad, it's just committal, which is generally not a good game plan early on. You want to be pretty flexible in the opening because a lot of things can happen. There's a lot of choice by your opponent. This really makes you want to take the outside. This is an outside like leverage move. White shouldn't respond here, and do they? Yeah, white shouldn't respond here. Just Tanuki, and they go approach the other side. And this already kind of puts an issue on black because you've taken the outside, but there's a huge gap in between like your outside and your opponent's outside.
Hmm.
You're trying to take the outside on one side, but you've left a gap, so white will just come through and ruin all your points. So pincer here might be worthwhile. And just because of that, you want to try and build something. You know, you've already taken the outside,
Yeah, can I ask you a little
but
bit more about this? So when you're looking at it where Sequoia did play with K16, comparing that to some other potentials like a closer, a more aggressive play at like M16, do you feel like the K16 play that Sequoia did go with is like a better balance? Or do you think that
um,
where else if you were trying to play in that sort of mindset, would you be looking in this area? Or would you be looking elsewhere even?
Uh, yes, I agree with the pincer and the line it's on. However, I think it's too conservative on both ends. It's
Hmm.
not really applying a bunch of pressure to white stone, but it's also kind of cramped with the other stone, especially if you just imagine that stone having a wall in a direction. Um, the main advantage is that white can't split it, but if white tries to split it now, even if it was farther, white's gonna have a difficult time getting like a really solid split without giving you a wall. Um, I don't even think white can split you if you played one further to the right. That's probably the balance I would do.
So you'd be
You could
looking
probably
to
get a
L16 stone or
yeah.
L16 play.
Yeah, that seems to be really good. M16 also is definitely playable. M16 is what I would first look at, but I think there's too much space in between it for white to just make a base on the inside of that.
Hmm.
So they can both try and get out their white stone while pressuring your stone and pressuring your connections. So usually that's not a good idea to let happen. And even if you do L16, that's still a consideration. But it's a little easier since it's probably you'd probably what stone how would you extend from that? I mean, I guess you wouldn't extend, right? You just if your opponent picks one of the connections, you just pick a different connection,
I
right?
think
Because you have full
so.
connection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be
So either
really
way, I
good.
just think I think this is too conservative on both sides. You need to be a little more ambitious.
Hmm.
Um,
But you do like the concept and the approach just a
yes.
little bit more.
Yeah. I do like the idea.
Okay, so from here then we have. So I try to move forward. There we go. So I think, like you were saying, we have FadedSun look at the situation and say, Faded goes, all right, I'm gonna take that corner away. Then you've left that vulnerability. I'm gonna try and get in
I'm
here.
just gonna live. Don't worry about me, guys. I'm gonna live. That's what he's saying. I think Faded just wants points right here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like this move from Sequoia because it feels antithetical to what you're trying to do. It feels unthematic, really. You're trying to take the outside, and you've taken the outside in every exchange you have so far, and then you're taking a low approach here. That kind of goes against what you want to do because white can just cap that stone actually pretty severely. Um, you can play at what J5 that immediately ruins your plans. Um, Now that's a bit of an issue for white. White would have to want to make a wall,
Mm-hmm.
but there's enough space and time right now to do something with that wall. You'll get
Right.
some points. Um, and because of that, I think it's still a good move.
So rather than the J3 play that Sequoia did do, if you were trying to stick then to that outside base play, if you were trying to stay thematic, where would you be looking? Would you just be looking at a J5? Would you be looking
J4,
more the left side? Okay, J4.
J4, just one line higher. Oh, one line on the side of the board means a lot. Especially the main thing here is that you want to at least keep even with your opponent. If you go too high, the issue is that your opponent slides under you. So if you play at J5, white just slides under you, and it works, but
Does it feel like you're seeding too much unnecessarily? You're allowing the slide too
um,
easily? Or
it feels like you're gonna be losing points because white still has it like the area is too large. Um, It's both work. One is riskier.
that's a
Playing
fair answer.
J5, you have to be very confident in your counting. Because the next obvious move for you is to just play a F6. Just ignore whatever white's doing and just go for rapid development and hope you can hold on to as much as possible. Um, and that seems very scary to me because you have to be absolutely sure that's enough points. And it doesn't look like enough points to me. And even attachment might be strong right under, right? Um,
Hmm.
I think an attachment would be good for white here if you play J5. So you'd also have to worry about that.
No, so right. So I guess since we're getting into it, if you mention here, if you go for the J5 play, you're looking at
Yeah,
the possibility of just attaching under as white,
yeah,
and really, even even the F6 still.
yeah, and that's scary. You'd have to strengthen your stone. Because if you
Right.
do this, they'd just cut at the waist, and if they slide, you have a similar issue. So if white slides or does a large slide, I suppose, under the one stone, they can then if you try to play three, then you can then attach to one from H5. So
Mm-hmm.
two would be one line down, and you could
Oh,
attach
I
to
see.
four.
Sorry, slide.
Yeah,
Understood.
so large slide, and
Still
then you play this.
the
Yeah,
F6, and then you're saying you
and
would
then
come
this
up.
is a scary attachment. Yeah, like what does black do here? Like white's going to get a useful cut.
Right, and there
Um,
that one, a useful cut seems impossible to stop.
yeah,
No, that makes sense. So in looking and exploring some of these options, your thought would probably be to to instead be looking at a line higher than what Sequoia did at J4,
yeah,
and conversely a line lower than what we were just talking about, because you were demonstrating the going too high creates those can create that vulnerability that isn't impossible to deal with, but you have to be really confident that you know how to
yeah,
deal with it and you still come out ahead.
exactly what you're going. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a balance, really. The general principle is that you want to keep if your opponent plays all high, you can also play all high. Um, but if it's mixed, you should probably play mixed too. Um, though you can play territorial if your playing opponent playing ambitious, but you just understand that you're going to have to invade.
Right.
Um, uh, it's like honestly,
Hmm.
it feels really like if black gets what he wants on the right side, assuming there's like no invasion and you just play that third line and both people just start building up, I think black will have enough points to beat white because there's still issues with like white's territory. There's
Hmm.
still an invasion on the top left. Black still has that approach stone, which can be useful for invading later, especially if you need to invade deeply. Black going to have an easier time um, defending any evasions because they're going to have stones basically surrounding whatever goes in. Whereas white has like basically one wall, one side that's like really strong.
Right.
Then like this would be a good time to make and two imaginary lines to picture what I'm showing. So just like draw an imaginary line up from the F4 up and then J3 up.
For
Yeah, J3 up. So assuming that this happens, right? It looks like black will have enough points.
right.
Um,
So you're basically you're sort of looking currently at like this left side,
this,
and then
yeah,
you can
and
go
then just a
further.
huge square for black. The good thing about black is that black still has there's still quite a few contentious areas for black. So because of that, it's good to remain flexible. Though this black does have a pretty major defect at 015. No, 08, 016. Um, you just can't stop it. It's too wide, I think. You'd have to play like a knight's move back, I think. I think white can just jump in though. This turn. Attachment, attachment seems scary here. Because Hane, then Hane.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to read it out as well, because I think you're right that it's
You'd have to descend, but descending's bad here since you've played K16.
right, right.
Then maybe no, well maybe they have to fix the cut. I think that's the issue. If you descend and they don't fix the cut, like they try to extend, you cut, and then it's a cap. If they don't protect that the O16 or the O17 stone, they're a little bit scared. So the variation is O16. Ooh, it's White's turn. Just give White a dummy move.
Somewhere over here. So you would
Yeah,
O16.
Hane on the left.
Mm-hmm.
Descend. Extend for or descend, I guess, again for White.
For N15. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Black cuts.
It N17.
And yeah, and if White doesn't protect that, so let's say White connects, or no, White should probably descend here. Um,
With
Descending seems better because there's no threat after you push through if you descend on 18.
18, yeah.
Yeah. Um, Black would probably crawl to M17, and then it's a fight, but it seems favorable for Black.
Hmm.
So I guess you are connected. It's just a little feisty.
It's a little right. It's a little feisty, and
That's a lot of Aji though. Like potentially, if you're trying to be fast, it's really hard to be fast here and not have issues
right.
because White. It looks like White has the potential to just lit inside you, which would be really bad. Um, I think you would have to. White would get two free moves because you would have to at least spend like a few moves trying to corral it.
Mm-hmm.
White just has to extend once, and they can get a bunch of like free moves later, or like just continuously extend and just make a huge wall and then make life inside your territory.
Right.
Like, it's not gonna be fun for Black.
No, but I think it's a good example of how we, how that's what happens, or how we can begin to try to envision what this space would look like, and what those vulnerabilities might be. Because if we are looking for that outside play, those are
Yeah,
obviously the sorts of things we're thinking about. And I think it's also helpful just to, especially for newer players, to start to get a sense of how do I, when I want to do quick counting, how,
what area should I envision?
yeah, what area do I envision, and how do I even sort of go about trying to get even a basic sense of where the game is at. Um,
I
but
think this also shows it's important to be flexible because if White invades, you've had all these outside stones, but you let them get invaded. So your idea for a big moyo just isn't gonna work,
right,
right?
right.
Um, it feels like playing F15 was kind of either a wasted move or just detrimental to your strategy because it kind of forces you in an area that you don't want.
Hmm.
Whereas if you played F17, I wouldn't hate the variation we played because Black can make a pretty huge base on the top
Right.
um, by the end of it.
As opposed,
So
right, and but that difference of just a couple places here between F17 and F15. F15, you're saying, really commits you, at least with that stone, to a certain direction. It doesn't give you
yeah,
any of the flexibility that you could get with F17.
yeah, because eventually, if you get time to, F15 can be played later. F17 is a bit more severe and a bit more threatening immediately because it's threatening a bunch of probes and attachments
Hmm.
and even just direct invasions. Um, and because of that, it generally will prompt a response out of White, so you usually come out with Sente by the end of it. Um, at
Right,
least if you Tanuki.
and and it's a great example of how in the game itself, when we go back to we're on move 13. So if we go back real quick, tried to do it, could not remember the shortcut, but with F15 here, there wasn't a response required, and it did immediately allow Faded to turn around and get Sente and get
Yeah.
initiative and be, put themselves on the aggressive and start to change that around. In those considerations too, not only the things you said at the beginning about the ways in which F-17 here that we're looking at gives you a lot more puts a lot more pressure on white immediately. It also if it generally allows you to keep Sente, which would allow you to keep setting the pace of the game. And as soon as that's given up so early in the game here, we can see the ways in which Faded makes use of that.
Yeah.
And does a nice job of really trying to get a nice advantage early on.
Yeah. I would also like to point out Fated's invasion actually is really tough to respond to. I think we overlooked that, but
At
this is
017
an
up in the
issue.
corner.
Yeah, this is an issue of direction of play. So Black would really, really like to try and freely eat that guppy at 017 by playing to the left of the invasion stone.
Right.
But the issue is that's the wrong direction of play for the rest of your stones. You'd be giving up way more points for you if you do that. Or at least it feels like way more points. Not 100% sure. I didn't count it. Don't have a mob come after me.
No, but it is
Yeah.
that crux of it versus where we what this
Wait, this
the way it ended
yeah,
up.
this feels bad to do to just let white live, but it's almost definitely the correct direction of play. Because it really works nicely with your stones on the side, and it threatens to connect up to your left side. So this is the proper response by Sequoia.
And so after
And direction
that,
of play, yeah.
no, sorry.
Direction of play is super important whenever you're building big moyos because, well, if you have a wall facing the wrong way, your invaders can just walk around it.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, spilled some
3,
tea.
2, 1. Real quick, do you? I can't remember. Is there a? I can check too. Is there a setting on Discord's voice noise suppression? Doesn't look like it.
Yes, there is.
I wasn't sure
Um,
if you could turn it down or you could lessen it because you're starting to cut in and out. So like for the it's been
it's better.
say
It's
give me
better.
that's I think that's better.
Yeah, I'm just gonna get closer to the mic.
Okay, okay, cool.
I'm just not talking terribly loud. There's people at my house.
Oh, that's fair.
Well, not people, but like my family's home.
Right, right, right. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
okay. Where
Okay.
did I cut out?
No, I think you were understandable, so I think it's okay. But you were starting like at the end there, you started to like fade down and get
Oh
quiet.
yeah, it's because I got quieted. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, cool. Okay, 3, 2, 1. So if we can go back to look at the we have the D10 play, the shoring up on the left hand side, and I think we have faded or excuse me, we have Sequoia as black. It looks like trying to grapple with what you were talking about earlier, seeing that there is a large gap here, and trying to figure out how they can shore it up and how they can begin to go ahead and protect that center. But they play it N16 instead of O16.
I agree with this actually. You can't really be too worried about a deep invasion right now. You have too many issues with your top side if you want to try and build big, especially with how it seems like they want to play. They're trying to imitate me, okay? That's what it looks like. Um,
They're trying to do the same sort of
yeah,
outside.
they're trying to do the big point strategy because I think in the past they've historically had issues with trying to figure out like how you actually win and go other than just killing everything, right? It's to make points, right? And I think they're trying to experiment with that in this game. Uh, this move specifically works. I'm not sure how good it is in comparison to other moves. As we mentioned before, there is a possible attachment at 016. You can play at O15, or the knight's move. N16, to me, the strongest connection is probably N15, the large knight's jump, because it's by far the safest, and it pretty much doesn't give you any weaknesses by the end of it because of how much distance there is.
Right. I think the thing here is that with by playing at N16, with black playing at N16, white can then immediately follow up with O16, threaten a
Yeah.
strong invasion here, but also hyper locally can set themselves up to remove the weaknesses that was present. Originally, what was just O17 by itself,
Yeah.
and press very strongly against that N16 stone. So that is nice. Where if black instead had gone to N15, if they were looking to play a little less aggressive, if they were with N15, white could still extend if they wanted to, or
Um,
but in doing so black wouldn't be under the same sort of constraints. So I think white would probably be looking to play a little differently. But it feels like in this case you sort of
it allows too many things, I feel like.
yeah.
Generally when you shoulder hit, you don't want to Hane, unless you have like a reason to. In this case, you do have a reason to, but it allows something nasty, so it's not that good. Whereas N15, if they do this, you're fine. You can just block. Um, the issue I see with this is that after you Hane, you crosscut, and there's no good direction to Atari, because white will still be able to get inside of you, and there's just too many weaknesses for black to deal with. This is one of those, I have one stick cutting two groups apart, so you're have to playing a bunch of moves on both sides, which is inefficient. Uh, that's good whenever you're the one building points, but whenever you're building inside your own territory, that's not good. That's really bad.
Right.
Um,
Right. No, well said.
so
And so I think the way we're seeing the it's coming up here. There's definitely a thing I think that is clever to see here, but we're seeing the ways in which um, once
ooh, ouch.
yeah
I
once
don't. Wait,
sure.
one sec. I just gotta pop the Discord back up. Okay, yeah, I'm back.
So once Saykoya plays at N16 and says like this is going to be my focus, Faded responds and says that's fine. This is going to develop. This is developing in the way I want to, and we can see the ways in which Saykoya is able to try to create a stronger presence here. At the same time, Faded is really locking this top corner down.
Ooh, I think. Yeah. There's another issue that I forgot. Like with this response, White, I'm pretty sure has an invasion at, or well, just like a tactic at P15, and then you have like so much Aji. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm reading is that ooh, sec. Okay, what I'm reading is P15 and then black cuts, white Ataris on bottom.
Mm-hmm. Black
White
connects.
like yeah, black connects and then it looks like white just lives. Or can run away. They can almost guaranteed make an eye. I would play super loose here, since black has a lot of strength. Something like key 12 looks strong, threatening a lot, to move in a lot of places. Um, I don't know. Do you have any better ideas? Maybe playing.
I think I like P12. I was looking um at O11, but that might be a little wide here. I definitely like the idea. I think I'm in agreement with you that playing a little bit looser, and I'm playing it.
Yeah.
Maybe my mind is going going a bit too loose for the space that you're in, because you are
You
still against
could.
Blackstones, but
I feel like if you want to play that wide, you might as well just go with the shoulder hit. That's the main thing. If you're gonna
mm,
play wider than this, try to lean on something. So it seems like Q11's a little more pressuring to that stone, and it's a little more. It allows you to have shape, a slightly better shape by the end of it. Because if, for example, Black tries to Atari the top stone, so Q15.
mhm.
Um, Okay, I guess the double Atari or like the
Yeah, with
ladder
P
threat is
P14.
stronger,
Yeah.
but that gives you a free move, so you just Atari back. So
Would you
they
do?
I would Atari on top. Yeah, you want to take the outside here.
Oh yeah, yeah. Whoops.
Wait, that's on the right. Yeah,
Yeah,
on
that's the right.
bottom, top direction of go is confusing because we alternate from like cardinal directions from relative directions. So
We
uh
do. But
yeah,
yeah, so
but
then
yeah, and then white gets another move. I would probably either play. I'm honestly looking at playing M13. That looks really strong. It looks like you can just give up one of those stones for basically free, and you'll get more outside. You're giving up like two stones, but you're also like making shape, getting stronger, and getting closer to your own groups, which is not what black wants.
right, right.
So even though this looks precarious for white, it looks really good. You're it's gonna be a weak group versus a weak group fight, and this is only a fight that white benefits from, really. Um, Assuming that like white just isn't dead, it looks like white's alive. Eventually,
Right,
uh,
right. It's obviously technically unsettled right now, but given the amount of space and the ways in which you can move, it seems likely that white can find life in here.
yeah,
And yeah, the ways you're, I see what you're saying. I like the M13. I think I was looking at O13 to solidify that shape initially, but I think what you're talking about makes more sense. That we're looking, or I should say,
crouch
you're
stones.
looking bigger. You're looking bigger. You're
Yeah,
looking a little faster because our ultimate goal isn't one or two stones. It's about making life somewhere
yeah,
inside the center to disrupt the entire operation that Black or Sequoia is trying to
yeah.
make happen.
It's more important to realize which stones where your Audi is are actually useful. The first two stones you played were to threaten something. They force responses and give you more options, whereas three and one are kind of trash stones. You kind of threw them away in exchange for having nine, seven, and a five, and those are great stones. Those really give you a bunch of options. You can make the fabled parallelogram and basically be alive because you have like four directions to go in.
I think that's also really what you've pointed out here is a really great example of the ways in which the ways in which you can use stones for multiple purposes, and the goal isn't always to stones can be stepping stones for other stones. That the goal isn't necessarily that we just we're really trying to capture, say, the O15 stone here, right? Our goal is bigger than that, and the way you've set
Sneakier.
it up, when you can read out this and you can see it all on the board now, you can see the ways in which we give up a couple of stones, but we've got, because of the way we sort of forced play, have a lot more options and we can do a lot more. So it's very cool to see that read out like that.
You know,
It's a
it'd be
smart call.
funny here. You want to be
What?
very funny here.
Well, it'd be very.
Instead of immediately playing this, white plays Tengen.
Whew. And then comes back for this.
Yeah, if you
That.
don't protect that cut, that's a very sneaky way to threaten a cut. Because it looks like a reduction, but you're actually threatening to just flat out live.
So
Ooh. You just reverse the way that you cut. Instead of cutting at P15 first,
you
you
cut
cut
it
it
and 15
in
first.
15. Yeah.
Yeah, so just
Or you can even clamp first, I guess. I think clamping first is probably better. Because
at
oh no, wait, you
014.
have to cut a P. You do have to. Yeah, I think clamping here is better, just because it's a if you play Tengen, but you're studying the same cut. In the end, I forgot the entire reason why we played P15, and it was because if you tried to Hane. Okay, so if you played P15 now
Oh,
and
with Tengen or just back in the original
without
game?
Tengen,
Okay.
back to the original game, if White Hane's now, Black cannot counter Hane, or I guess double Hane, because um, White can like Atari,
Right.
and then you can do. Does the ladder work for white? I don't think it does because you're putting in Atari. So white gets free endgame by connecting here. This is probably what Faded read out. I don't hate it. I guess what Faded did was more proper, probably better.
So
Dang.
yeah. So if we look at what Faded did, Faded instead went ahead and tried to play around the corner here.
And this, oh, ouch. That hurts. That's really, this is really bad shape, but it's really bad shape in a moment where you don't want bad shape. This, I feel, is almost necessary to to instead of make the empty triangle to just hane the stone, because if you don't, it's extremely painful. As you'll see, the empty triangle is one of the easiest types of shapes to kill in a fight. There's very often snapback threats.
Yes. They actually go away from it for a little bit. I thought they. So
this makes sense.
We get a little more set up here on the left. Oh, and then we do deal with the left hand side first before we come back to the right. So we put a pin in the right to look at that in a minute.
I don't like Black's response here. I don't know how this resolves, but it looks like White just is going to be able to separate them, and you're not really pressuring the weakness. In fact, you allowed them to play on their weakness, which is in between the two stones. A stronger response would have literally just been one lineup. Just play on top of the weakness. If you have no idea where to play, try to avoid playing around the weakness, because that usually allows your opponent to play it. If you're not going to play on the weakness, you got to make sure playing on the opponent fixing is bad. In this case, it's bad for Black to allow White to fix because it just strengthens White tremendously.
Right.
And Black's not going to be able to get out. Whereas if you do the elephant's jump, White's going to not have a fun time trying to poke that out, especially if you feel like giving up a stone. In fact, that's probably the best variation. White pokes out the eye, right? Black just plays simply at F12 afterwards. And then what did White accomplish?
Yeah. I mean, that's...
White got a boomerang, but you've just helped Black basically incente. Because Black's gonna start threatening... Black looks like they're about to pincer the other stone at D10. It looks not fun. Though Black is also threatening to come in, so White would probably jump with that stone. So White would jump, and Black would probably just immediately attach. If not, you would do another knight's move.
You think?
Yeah, you either attach on the right now saying, I need these points. Like, if you count and you're like, oh, I'm going to be down if I don't take these points, you do this, because you have to. Otherwise, you can be a little more passive and do a knight's move, and then do this. So, if they jump, you can, if they directly attach, you can hane, which just is perfect spacing for you. Very convenient that lines up perfectly with where you played. So again, it would have been nice if you had that fourth line stone. This would have been so nice. You would have had the two space jump in between. Oh. But if they let's go back 2 moves. If they decide to do the knight's move, then you can come on and attach to that to the right. Same principle.
You mean if they come down like this, then you would also...
Yeah, yeah. And if they try to do anything larger, you can cut them off. And then it's going to be a whole mess of an invasion. But if you're going to play big, you got to get used to dealing with stuff like that.
Right. If you're playing big, you can't you can't have it all easy. So that's definitely a part of it that you're ready for. And I think if we, in a second, we'll jump back to the game. I think if we see the ways in which this is, certainly there's a lot here that can get messy, but you can see the ways in which in this exchange, at least one possible exchange, you've got black, yes, not able to keep the entire framework they originally envisioned, but that was never going to be the case once as we
You
start to
just need
lighten up.
enough. That's a
Right.
big mistake people who play my style is. You don't need to keep everything. You just need to keep enough to win.
And you can see the ways in which, as Ruler's talking about here, you are still, your stones, what 1, 3, and 5 in particular, are still working around that center, that idea of that big influence-based play and working towards the center and trying to work with that framework. And if we compare that with the way that things ended up, where played a little bit lower, and because of that, White was able to Faded it was just able to tamp down, and now any getting a presence here is much harder.
Basically impossible. There's too
Yeah.
much influence, I would say. Um, it's just going to be a fight that White's going to win because White's going to have. If you come into that space, White's going to play on the outside, which means they're going to have ladders on the inside most of the time, and White controls the inside. Um, Trumpet connection did it.
And if we also look at the way things played out here comparatively as well, not only is White getting a really nice position
This
on the
move's
outside.
unnecessary. Ooh, yeah. Continue your phrasing.
The way things play out here, White or Black ends up losing everything.
Yeah. It's because of the move they played. A11 looks strong, but generally, if you have a cut like this, you don't want to extend down because your stone's too weak. Even though it has 3 liberties, those are some easy to take away 3 liberties.
Yeah.
There's so many puzzles that are just about getting rid of a side like this by using Aji. In this case, Faded is able to do this to make a snapback threat. This is automatically a snapback. Yeah, right here. Common Tetsuji. And Black can't extend, and if Black tries to come up and play, you just Atari. You have multiple Ataris. In fact, it's better to Atari on A13 because Black can't do anything. If Black takes, it's a snapback. So you gain Sente by the end of it, which is crucial.
Yes.
So instead of playing down, it's generally better for Black to find a way to fix the cut, or to even just ignore it. In this situation, I might ignore it and slide under or just attach. I would attach at C16. It feels like you're strong enough to do that.
To attach to C16.
Yeah, C16 feels really natural to me. Because it's 1 stone, right? You're losing about 1 stone, and that stone's kind of tenuous, right?
Right. So the
It's
stone
more
we're
important
talking
to
about is
yeah.
it B11 here.
The delta. Yeah. It feels a little bit more prudent to just make life. Threaten and lean on things, make life. If you really wanted to keep the stone now, it doesn't feel good to connect, and I think they recognize this. Connecting here just feels really awful. And it's because you have an empty triangle and you connect. You make a good shape, and then you make a good shape connected to a bad shape. So it's just a bad shape, unfortunately.
Right.
Because of the cut, yeah.
And the other, if you can connect, you can connect at C14, but you're still going to be doing the same thing as earlier, where you would be at least leaving open, you just completely giving up the B11
Yeah.
stone. And so if we can, go ahead.
So if you really want to keep that stone, you want to play A12. That's the place you want to spot because that fixes the cut. It fixes both Ataris, so that's convenient. And I think you can still get out as Black. Can you? No, but White has to use Sente in order to get out. So if White tries to get out, you can make life, I think. So I would personally prefer to just get out. it feels like you'll probably lose Sente in the process, and you're giving white strength on the outside, which is not really what you want. Or not on the outside, but like you're giving them strength on the inside for them. In this variation, they also got on the outside, but
Right.
I feel it's more important that white got strength to basically make it impossible to invade on the bottom left.
Hmm.
Um, you might have like one invasion point at F7. I feel like your only spot, and that's a pretty light invasion, and it's E7. F7 works
Okay.
too,
Yeah.
but E7 is a
Right.
little deeper. Yeah, it feels like you're severing the connection. Because if you play at F7, they play at E7. Same issue. Same issue as we talked about here. Don't play around the weakness, play on the weakness.
Right.
So usually stronger. But in this case, I think they can just guppy you, right? They'll just play F7 themselves. They have too many strong connections at around you, I think.
I.
Yeah, they just play. They attach
Yeah.
here, and you don't. There's no living. Or if you're living miserably in co.
Right. And then the way that it plays out, just so that we can see the way it ends up playing out. Not only are the stones in the top right um, dead, we've also got black. Even as black is trying to find something in this right left hand corner, um, you're up against you're up against two groups of white stones that are kind of squeezing you in and making it difficult. Let alone the fact that you've helped white build a set of stones to really push in and try
Yeah,
to reduce any center base play that you would try to realize.
it pretty much looks like it has an eye if you don't respond right now. Because F11 or even G11 just immediately make some form of Panuki or not Panuki turtle shell. I forget the some sort of shape.
Some sort of live in shape.
Yeah, that pretty much looks like it guarantees life. Because there's just so much space in the center that it doesn't look like black can feasibly hold it all in. Especially with how weak the groups is, and in fact, you can't. It actually is just living. It's just a huge reduction because the stones are dead at C13, C12. So white doesn't even need to make an eye. White is just alive and just trying to wreak havoc, and it kind of looks game ending to me. Like it doesn't seem like black will have enough points. Um,
Speaking of game ending, let me use that as a nice segue. We've got in roughly 10 minutes or so. I do want to try and kind of zoom us forward a little bit here, because I think that there's a lot of really intricate fighting that happens that I think we could easily spend a couple hours just talking about different choices. And for
oh
anyone
no,
who's able to see, I think there's a lot just to take time and look at. But maybe if we can hit some of the big developments now that we've looked at the way
yeah,
the early game framework has so much of what we'll see in just a minute is was reliant on the way in which this game was
played out.
started,
Yeah.
and the concerns you brought up. So again, real quick, we can obviously mention the top right, and you mentioned that this is a problem.
Oh, this is a bad. This shape is really bad. I don't know if Sequoia thought it was too scary. The issue, like, they might have thought, oh, they have a cut here, and that cut's scary, and or they might like tombstone me. Like tombstoning here might be an issue. You'd have to read it out to make sure if you get actually if you can actually escape or not. But I don't know. This is not a good result. And if you're gonna make an empty triangle like this, you have to extend one further just so you don't die.
Mhm.
Because now that those stones are dead, they're just dead now. In fact, they were dead the second Sequoia Hanade.
Right, right, all the way,
Like,
and we'll go back a couple more. We go back a few more moves. Way back here, it moved
yeah,
23.
white cuts and the empty triangle is dead, which
Right.
seems absurd. But I think Faded knows this, so Faded is just trying to play in Sente and then come back and do this, which is good timing. I think that's something we've probably neglected to talk about. Like Faded's timing seems pretty impeccable here. It just seems very natural. Everything seems to make sense in terms of timing.
Right, and so when we talk about that too, we're looking at, when this this top group wasn't necessarily under any direct threat, whereas this left side had a lot more development that could be done. And after this left side development was settled, and especially because Faded came out on top, it this threat which had been existing on the right hand side seems like an easy pull to go ahead and get settled now, when before anything else is happening on the board, and you've put yourself in a better position,
Yeah.
trying to put even more pressure on your opponent and keep up the feeling of, I have I have your stones in the palm of my hand, is certainly a nice way to keep that momentum rolling.
Yeah, it's if you can ask your opponent tough questions about where they need to play, you've done a good job. Um, in this case, it's hey, do you want to stop my development in the top to make me guarantees more points, or do you want to save those stones that could be pretty crucial to your Moyo? Vote now on your phones.
It is, and Sequoia, gives the vote, but it's definitely one that not
This is
not the way they wanted. They were hoping
Well, I
for.
think this is forced. Like you can't let white really get through.
Hmm.
So I thought this was a fine move
Yeah,
because you're just being like, I don't know how they played it out, but it seems like the only like maybe extending might be better. It's a better connection. Um,
extending.
but
Uh,
yeah, so the variation I'm thinking of is Q13 and then playing N13 afterwards, whatever after whatever they play.
so if
So if they
white,
extend again,
actually, they would need to
ooh,
extend.
okay. Well, yeah. Assuming they extend, you play N13 and then you're safe. That
Yeah.
like stops any trouble. If they clamp, you'd probably have to do something different. I'd probably Hane the clamp and just be like, okay, we're going for a ride.
Okay, okay.
So like, yeah. Um,
You think it's something like,
no, I was talking about if you clamp directly first,
oh,
because I
okay,
wasn't
just
thinking about the
start,
clamp.
start,
Yeah,
start.
if you start the clamp after I extend, um,
All right, extension, clamp.
then
You're saying
clamp,
you
I
would.
would Hane on the right. Yeah, because those stars are in Atari now. So now I get out. Now you have the same invasion problem as we mentioned earlier.
You know,
You probably play on the outside. Play on the outside here.
put on
So
the
you're trying to
outside.
invade on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if you invade on the inside, I just take the stones, put more stones in Atari, and that's not good.
That's fair.
So, um, would you fix here? Yeah, I guess you have to, right? But you're getting out because you have a bamboo joint.
Yeah, yeah.
So it might be. Do
Might
you
be.
cut here? Do you cut at S13 here? This might be the timing to cut after you fix,
Yeah.
because it's a free stone. It's a free stone, and then they do have to take, and then clamp on the bottom, the thread to take. Uh, I don't know. That just might not be a useful cut.
It, I feel like it ends up being a little small.
I think that's end game.
Yeah.
I would probably just leave this unresolved,
Yeah.
or maybe just Hane on top, Hane again, and then or extend or something. This feels like the invasion stones are worth more. Ooh, you have something in Sente. L15. That's in Sente, I think.
L15.
Yeah, you threaten to capture the stones. Because if you don't direct ladder. You play L16. You
There's,
do start the ladder, but you oh, I'm saying like with fight if black Tanukis. So let's say they
oh,
just play
I see.
Tengen. Let's say they play Tengen.
They play Tengen. You're saying
Yeah,
then
that's
you
move.
jump in.
Yeah, and then black has to extend, and then white extends. And that group is eventually dead because the group on the right is living, and you should have more liberties on the left.
That's clever. I didn't see that.
Yeah. And not only that, so black has to connect if they want to keep any semblance of points, and it's probably best to do the tiger mouth at L17, back in the starting position, after 6. So white plays this, and it's probably better to do that to prevent yourself from being undercut. Though, now that I think about it, it might be better to play lower. Because I forget direction of play. I forgot that they didn't approach. Normally you approach, so it's natural to play closer to the side.
Right.
Here they have this. They want to get the center, so you play down. So, yeah.
With L15.
And then, white probably just descends. At 13.
Oh, 13.
No, at 13.
Sure. Yeah. It would descend, and then you would continue from there. So obviously, it.
I don't think does the ladder work. Let's read it out real quick. Yeah, it looks like it works. So yeah, the cut doesn't work because the ladder works.
But still, so this is granted from here on. Obviously, you can find other places because of that. Then to look to add ladder breakers. Might be a thought from that point. And if we look with the way things played out, then we do have with P13 there. I think you're absolutely right. It makes a lot of sense. I think to it's not the it is a smart adjustment by Saykoya, but it obviously wasn't the original intention that they would need to pull back so much. And if we look
what happens when you play fast and loose, that's when you got to get used to. You got to get used to maybe not giving up stones necessarily, but not getting nearly as much as you probably envisioned.
Right, which is
ambitious.
I think, you talk about proper counting can really make a difference. That when you're ahead, when you're behind, and how much, roughly at least by how much, so that when you can play more conservatively, when you need to play a little bit more aggressive, a little looser, you can have a strong feel for where you are, an accurate read for where you are. And we see there's a clever wraparound here.
I can't believe you're calling me out like this. Ouch. Oh, that hurt. That hurt on so many levels.
No, I think that one of the strengths that you have that is definitely indicative of not just a strong player, but a strong player who focuses on these big shape plays. Is you have to know where exactly am I? How big can I? If I'm going big, how much can I afford to lose and still come out ahead by? And I think in a lot of the games we reviewed, we've definitely seen that come through when you've talked about sort of where people are at in different states of the game. There is, given the time constraints, I want to go ahead and move us through quickly. We can see the ways in which this
most
develops.
of this is, for the most part, same issue as before. This is going to lead to trouble for Saykoya. Because right here, Saykoya plays the vital point. And you just go, this is living. It's not.
No. And
so, Sumego problem, for those who want to read it out, we'll give him, pause right now. This is pretty cute, I would say.
This is a challenging one, too.
Yeah, this one's not easy to spot out immediately, but you have to realize the board state of just the entire left side, which does give away the answer to this, basically.
Right.
So Faded plays the proper response first. It takes the Atari because it's in Sente. So now black only has... It looks like black has 2 eyes, but you've definitely limited that area to only having 1 eye, which is important. Because now, Faded falsifies an eye. And you're like, well, this doesn't falsify an eye. But it does. This is threatening an Atari immediately, so black has to capture. Okay, well.
So normally black does. In this case, black doesn't. which is
This is probably
surprising.
a better response, but you just get a target here. Um, yeah,
And
play the
because
way.
right, because Faded knows that the situation is still completely in their favor, just gets an advantage. Sequoia comes back and tries
Yeah.
to salvage it, and it still at this point looks like there may be the possibility for a second eye. What is clever here is
Is
this
that
is the A14.
yeah.
So
Black can't play at A13 because it's squeezed. If you play there, you're an Atari. And that's the thing you had to see.
yep. And so because of that, then this is in if we're only looking locally and just talking about, again, not talking about sort of the larger board for a second, if Sequoia wants to respond,
This is the best response.
needs to take the stone, but then that allows Faded that extra move to A13 to falsify that eye, and now we're still down to a single
It's
eye.
now, yeah, it's now connect or die with a single eye. So what Black really needs to do here is try and make another eye. It's very crucial. And in fact, you kind of have to. You've thrown so many stones there that it feels like you have to ignore anything White's doing in order to keep life because it's just that important. You've thrown 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. About 40 points. 40, yeah, like 40, okay. 44 points. You've thrown 44 points. You want to try and salvage it. That's 44 points is game winning.
Absolutely, yeah. It's huge. So, and I think that we see Sequoia trying to do that,
Yeah.
trying to find a way to salvage here. But again, it's another it's another false eye. So
Yeah. It'd be better to play on top, I would say. Try and threaten the weak group and connect up with your own stones. So playing at like E8, F8, maybe a jump if it's possible. So basically just a square around those two stones. Those are all possibilities you need to look at. Um,
rather
is
right as opposed to here where what we're doing is we're creating the false eye
false
that isn't,
yeah.
so we're not really gaining anything because we've just got another false eye. Two, we're further strengthening White's position at the moment.
You did get a co-threat though. That might be if you were able to somehow get a life, like a co for life, then this is actually not a bad play because you have a co-threat at D5, and you're wondering, hey, why are you talking about co's? Well, when you have one life and a bunch of false eyes, and there's a bunch of weak groups, you're probably going to win a co fight. So a co for you is probably winning.
Yep. No, and that's a good way. It's definitely a good. It's an important thing to keep in mind. If we look at how the right side plays out,
Ooh, this is that? I don't think that's good for black on the right. I don't think that's Joseki.
no, I don't. It's
You,
I don't believe it is either.
I think you. So I think the normal Joseki move. We'll do this real quick. I think the normal Joseki move after you attach and they Hane. I think you have several. I don't think the crosscut might work because you have the extra stone.
Right
But I
over it.
think the proper response is to extend to the left at P6.
Yes.
That might be the move. You might also be able to make like a weird tiger's mouth to guarantee that you get the corner. I don't know, like R5. I think those are
R5.
both playable. Um, at least at this level, they're both probably playable.
Right, right. And those are a little bit those just are a little bit safer here. You're definitely more aggressive trying
You're
to
saying
lean
I'm
on
going to
that
kill
R10.
you.
Yeah.
You're holding a knife and you're running at them saying I'm going to kill you.
Which works
It's
if you can see it through, but
yeah.
I think we're a Liberty short.
Yeah, I think the stone would have to be one closer than the crosscut works.
Yep. So we have this continuing here, and then we have Faded beginning to just tear through the
Bro,
center.
yeah. It's just too, these groups are too weak, and now there's no points.
And if we continue on again,
I think for the most part, this was just the mistake of invading because you gave white outside. Um, Generally, if you're taking outside, you want to take all of the outside because you don't want something like this to happen, where white gets a little bit of the outside and just throws like peas at you until it's just a big mess.
yeah, and it's a. I think the other thing too that if there were a little bit more time, because we are trying to keep an hour, so
Yeah.
we are kind of moving through the rest of this pretty quickly. But as you can clearly tell from Ruler's analysis, there's a lot here to look at, and not only from the way the shapes started, but in a lot of these exchanges. I think if you have a chance to look at the if the for those who are part of the tournament, if you look at the SGF file and take some time, I think there's a lot to learn about sequencing, about setup. Like even here, when we pause on move 164, we can see the ways in which, if we go back just a couple moves, that Faded is able to set up another killer move here. And so
Yeah, it's think doesn't Q12 fix this?
Q12, I was
I
also
think
looking at
Q12.
R12,
No,
but
Q12 for black. Q12 for black to protect the
oh,
cut, and
whoops.
I think that lives. I think that lives because white can't. White extends, and then you. I think it's white extends. You connect. I think that's dead, but no, it's co. I think it goes to co because
Yeah.
if white has to push in from the bottom. If white takes the stone, they're fine. I was looking at extending instead.
Hmm.
It's a little more forcing.
Sure.
Black has to respond with that, and then white comes under and then starts a kill.
White.
Oh, no, that's just dead. That's just
Yeah,
dead. You're right.
because you can go either way. But so from here though, so because instead Saykoya ends up playing just one higher, trying to keep that group connected, Faded is able to take advantage of that and resolve that much more cleanly without just much more cleanly. So from here, there's a lot of, I think, Sequoia doing a very admirable job of trying to make these groups live, but there are a number of groups across the board that just don't have a solid base to work from, and Faded has, I think, a demonstrates a good sense of spatial control here, such that whenever Sequoia is trying to get trying to make ice space, either when we look at like H2, Faded recognizes those critical points and is able to capitalize them to prevent easy eyes from Sequoia. Or if we look at the space in the bottom right here, is able to keep Sequoia crunched down and contained such that there just isn't sufficient space to be able to make easy eyes. But Sequoia makes an extremely valiant effort in trying to find a way to get life here. And I think we can see the way that these earlier stones really start to come together. And so the end of the game ends up with Faded winning by resignation. Ruler, do you want to add sort of any thoughts about the overall game itself?
Well, unfortunately, if you play big and you're not able to keep big, this is usually what happens. Um, Unless you're like maybe usually you get a side, but if you let white in, white usually just runs amok and pokes at everything, and because they don't have to worry about whether they're safe or not, they can be very severe, and it's tough to even make life after white gets in. Um, I think for the most part, Faded play very well. Saykoya made a lot of good decisions, but I think just missed the tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and think the lesson of the day, guys, is to play on the weakness. Uh, there's been how many times now?
Right, the people that we've seen players play around it and so recognize or seem to recognize that that is a weak point, but instead of playing directly on it, play around it, and that ends up hurting them in the long run because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
I think another thing too, if I can just add on, was really to echo something you said earlier, which is that in this big influence style, if your if your focus when you're going for that big influence style, smaller missteps in the case of, for example, the top left, where you cede some of your center influence, or in the bottom where Saykoya played lower than they could have, and so gave Faded an opportunity to also build up from there. Those smaller moments can really have strong impacts when so much of your gameplay is on this idea that you are going to build a big framework. Whereas if you were looking to play more on the sides, a misstep on one side wouldn't necessarily have the same reverberating
Yeah,
issues
like it's
that
much
it
more
does here.
local.
Yeah, and so I think the other thing that you were echoing, that if that is your game plan, sticking to that game plan and making sure that the trades that you are going to have to make in every game, that the trades that you're going to make are still focused on that outcome, and how much of a difference that makes. We can see that when you get away from that, it can spread across the board, and you can end up in a situation where it looks like you have, nothing is connected. But if we jump back to the
Ooh,
earlier part of the game, it started out very differently. Yeah, please.
I think Black actually could have made a living group. Move what? There's a connection they didn't need to have to make. Move 212. Very end. Black has the move at L13. I think that's close to living. It's close. You're threatening to capture that group. White can try to save it with or not L, yeah, L18. Because pushing is bad. And then there's a possibility that there's some shenanigans. Maybe attaching works. You'd have to read this out, but ooh, yeah, it does work. Attaching does work here because if you try to Atari it, we get the other side.
So if you just
So no, not attaching here.
not
You don't need to
touching.
make the connection. I'm talking about because you have MII connection, right? There's no need to play it.
Oh, that's fair.
So
Right.
yeah, so for example, for those who don't see, if white tries to push on the left side to try and cut them off, or
Wait, you're
or
looking.
the
Oh,
right
here.
side,
Sorry.
either way works. Either way works.
So you're saying that
So
white.
then you have a connection here, and then it's always going to be connected. But I think is it capturing? It is capturing rays, so you do have to connect, and then white gets out. I think. Yeah, white gets out. And okay. Unfortunate.
But it's yeah. This is one of those where games like this I think are really interesting because
Yeah,
they're
I don't know.
good to study for this reason, to look for ways in which these complicated battles could play out differently. You were gonna add.
Headstones are still useful, guys. Look for Raji.
Yep. Yep. No, absolutely. Okay. Um, let's go ahead. We'll say that wraps up our initial
Yeah,
analysis of the game. There's definitely a lot to explore, and I think that the game itself is really one that there's a lot to learn from. But if I can add as a way of ending here, if you're a fan of chess, Wargroove, or just turn-based games in general, definitely check out the Groove of War channel. They obviously have Wargroove replays, but they've also got the chess replays from the tournament as well as wonderful commentary. And thank you for watching, Ruler. Thank you for joining me.
yeah, nerds.